Good evening, this is the evening from the New York Times for Monday, August 10, 2026. I'm Evan Gorlick, and here's the latest at the end of the day. We begin tonight in Colombia, where a powerful 7.4 magnitude earthquake struck this morning, killing more than 100 people and leaving a trail of destruction across several major cities. The epicenter was in one of the country's poorest regions on the Pacific coast, but the shaking reached far inland. In Cali, Colombia's third-largest city, about 100 miles away, at least 26 buildings collapsed. President Abelardo de la Espriella, who took office just days ago on Friday after never having held public office before, said the quake damaged more than 1,500 residential buildings, 52 schools, and 18 health centers. A former criminal defense lawyer elected on promises to crack down on crime and shrink the government, de la Espriella now faces his first major test as commander-in-chief. Our reporter on the ground in Cali today documented one of many desperate rescue efforts in the Alameda neighborhood, where civilians in t-shirts pounded jagged slabs of concrete with wooden poles and tore away debris with bare hands. Eder Figueroa, 48, who lives next door to a collapsed apartment building that had a pharmacy on the ground floor, told us, "We're digging what we can." Everyone went running to help: the lady who sells ice cream, the lady who sells juices. "We think there are 3 people alive inside, because we can't find them, including 2 children. The death toll seems likely to rise as rescuers continue searching the rubble." From Colombia we turn to the Middle East, where President Trump's diplomatic overtures hit new roadblocks this weekend on 2 fronts. In Gaza, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday rejected Trump's latest plan for Hamas to turn over its weapons to a new Palestinian administration in exchange for Israel suspending military operations and gradually withdrawing troops. Netanyahu, who is up for re-election in just a few months, faced objections from hawkish Israelis to those concessions, and his public rejection marks an unusually sharp break with Trump, whose relationship with Netanyahu has had what our correspondents call a dizzying and often unpredictable arc. The 2 leaders launched the war against Iran together in late February, but have since clashed over how to end it and over the future of Israel's military campaigns in Gaza. Meanwhile, Iran issued its own list of demands over the weekend through Mohammad Bagher Zelgadar, Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, saying the Strait of Hormuz would not fully reopen until the United States lifts its naval blockade and sanctions, withdraws U.S. military forces from the region, and pays war reparations. Iran has been negotiating with Oman rather than directly with the U.S., and made clear today that even if Oman and Iran reach an agreement, the waterway stays closed until Washington accedes. Analysts suggest Iran sees control over the strait as its best leverage to force Trump to deliver on promises made in a June memorandum of understanding that quickly fell apart. Back in Washington, President Trump signed an executive order today calling for American children to be immunized against 11 diseases rather than the 17 recommended by the CDC. It's the 3rd time in less than a year he's ordered a reduced vaccine schedule, pointing to countries like Denmark as a model. He said he was motivated in part by concerns over whether vaccines were tied to autism, even though dozens of studies have found no such link. It remains unclear whether the order has any legal power. The latest version directs the Attorney General to advance legal challenges against states that violate what it calls children's rights to religious or medical vaccine exemptions. In other Trump administration news, the president conceded on Sunday that there was some contractor error in the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool renovations after weeks of falsely blaming the pool's algae-stained waters and peeling lining on vandals. A hastily installed blue lining had begun to peel up, and new water purification systems failed to prevent a massive algae bloom. Traffic to Truth Social, the president's social media platform, has fallen sharply this summer. Monthly visitors were down about 36% from a year ago in July, with a similar drop in June. And a Times investigation found that Durand Bobby Joe, whose past hardwood flooring and crypto ventures failed, has bought $100 million worth of tokens in Trump's crypto business, illustrating the ease with which investors with shady backgrounds can funnel money to the president. On artificial intelligence, the White House maintains a sanguine view even as voters grow anxious. Americans worry about AI stealing jobs and making electricity more expensive, and more than half say they'd support banning the giant data centers that power the technology. Trump has called those data centers money machines, amounting to tremendous wins for the states and communities that are lucky enough to get them. His top aides have dismissed suggestions that the administration should slow down. But Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont pushed back Monday, sending a letter to the chief executives of OpenAI, Anthropic, and Meta calling on them to pause development. Sanders wrote that corporations have already lost control of models that could cause potentially cataclysmic results for millions, citing the company's own statements that they would halt new models if the technology became too risky to safely manage, a threshold he argues has now been passed. It is not too late to avoid disaster, Sanders wrote. Stop. In more top news, Taylor Farms, already dealing with a cyclosporiasis outbreak linked to iceberg lettuce, voluntarily recalled its jalapenos and products made with them, including spicy guacamole, mango pico de gallo, and taco dip, over a separate salmonella outbreak. The products were distributed across 26 states to major retailers including Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. Lake Mead, the nation's largest reservoir behind Hoover Dam, fell to its lowest levels ever in the latest warning of the Colorado River's dire condition, threatening water supplies for more than 25 million people across the Southwest. The Trump administration proposed a new rule requiring food companies to notify the government when they add new ingredients, moving to close a decades-old loophole that lets companies introduce ingredients by asserting they're generally recognized as safe without FDA review. A Ukrainian drone attack on Nizhnekamsk, an industrial city 550 miles east of Moscow that houses one of Russia's largest and most advanced oil refineries, killed at least 13 people and wounded 39, among the deadliest strikes on Russian territory since the full-scale war began. Progressives are being outspent and receiving little support from the Democratic Party, yet they're winning primaries anyway. In Wisconsin, Francesca Hong's campaign showed up in force at a No Kings protest in Milwaukee while other Democratic gubernatorial candidates were largely absent. Flock cameras, which can track every car in America, are facing a bipartisan backlash. In Texas, liberals and conservatives agree they don't want cameras trained on their cars. And in Pakistan's pepper capital of Kunri, farmers who traditionally dried chiles under the sun are finding that process riskier as the climate grows hotter and drier. Now, a moment to unwind. In Glens Falls, New York, print newspapers aren't dying, at least not the Chronicle, a free weekly where business has been humming for 46 years under founder Mark Frost. Its journalism is unabashedly local: schools, town hall meetings, all things parking. Recent additions included a rattlesnake attack bulletin and a front-page feature on butchering a deer. Frost, now 75, has almost single-handedly steered the publication for nearly half a century. He distributes copies in his Subaru Forester, and the faithful stand waiting at drop-off points like the Hannaford grocery store. The question now, can the Chronicle keep on keeping on? Also in our time to unwind section, from his cluttered workshop in Portland, Maine, Austin Phillips is one of the last full-time ventriloquist puppet makers in America. At 33, he sculpts, paints, sews, and solders to craft one-of-a-kind characters. Making a dummy begins with the face. Phillips pours resin into a handmade mold, reinforces the shell with epoxy, then adds eyes, a mouth, and internal mechanisms. Painting the expressive features, he says, is a bit like applying makeup. A vanishing art, kept alive in a backroom in Maine. A few dinner table topics for tonight. Waymo is bringing its driverless cars into more cities faster than ever, which means more situations they don't know how to handle, so-called edge cases multiplying with the fleet. South of the border, the giant neon-lit sombrero on I-95 at the Carolina border has enticed road trippers for almost 80 years. Tacky, rude, and beloved, but is it worth saving? On Wednesday, mainland Europe will see its first total solar eclipse in nearly 30 years. The shadow will cut across northern Spain and a tiny corner of Portugal before ending in the Mediterranean. And a nostalgia wave is sweeping Gen Z. Between dreamcore videos and retro Windows PC graphics, young people around the world just want to reminisce. What to do tonight? Cook a creamy yet airy corn risotto. Use AI tools to score lower prices on flights and hotels by having bots monitor your bookings for price drops. Test your knowledge on extreme heat with our quiz. Pluck that fussy eyebrow hair with first-class tweezers. Capture aerial photos and videos with cheap, lightweight drones. And play today's spelling bee, Wordle, and mini crossword. And one last thing, howdy, Kenya. Last month, hundreds flocked to the International Cowboys and Cowgirls Day Festival in Nairobi, headlined by a Nigerian star known simply as the Countryman. They belted country classics in Stetson hats and sturdy blue jeans, downed beer, shot whiskey, gnawed barbecue 8,000 miles from Texas or Tennessee. We have cows and ranches, said one attendee, a woman from Kenya's Maasai community. A pastoral one, she explained, is essentially cowboy. More and more Africans are catching the country music bug. Have a twangy evening. Thanks for reading. This has been the evening from the New York Times. I'm Evan Gorlick. We'll see you tomorrow.